The ER doors breathed open at 2:17 p.m., a thin squeal of rubber on metal. Thomas Mercer stepped through in dress blues that carried their own weather. 3 neat rows of ribbons caught the light. Blood had soaked one shoulder, spreading like a dark blossom through white. He walked as if the floor belonged to him. "I need this looked at," he said to the intake nurse without breaking stride. "Minor shrapnel. Rinse it. Wrap it. I've got a meeting." Lila Nguyen lifted her eyes from the keyboard. "Sir, you're bleeding more than minor." "I said minor." He didn't sit. He hovered. The smell of sweat and bay salt came off him hot and metallic under the antiseptic. Dr. Ava Sinclair pushed through the curtain of Bay 4 with a chart in her hand and damp hair tucked behind one ear. Her scrub top was clean. The burn mark on her left forearm flashed when she reached for gloves. A cobalt tourniquet cord looped her wrist like a bracelet. She tugged the cuff down habit more than shame. "Mr. Mercer," she said, voice even. "I'm Dr. Sinclair. Let's take a look." He didn't meet her eyes. He looked past her for someone older, broader, familiar. "Where's the physician? I mean the doctor." "I am the doctor," she said. She stepped closer and angled her body so the light hit the blood bloom. "Can I see the wound?" He set his jaw. "I asked for a doctor, not a nurse playing dress-up." Lila's mouth tightened. The hum of the fluorescence filled the gap. Ava didn't react. She peeled the gauze with Celine and patience, lifting the edge a millimeter at a time, reading the pattern of clotted red through cotton. The field dressing was tight and clean, the kind you apply to someone else in a moving truck or to yourself in a mirror. The cloth finally lifted. The hole was small, 4 millimeters, maybe 5. The edges were smooth and turned inward, a dark point with an orderly rim. There was no peppering, no tearing, no stippled abrasions. She slid her fingers under the skin, a half-inch around the site-mapping firmness, watching his face for flinches. None. She checked his back and found nothing. No exit. "Where did this happen?" she asked. "At a Marine Corps Museum event," Mercer said. "Old grenade malfunction, embarrassing, surface level." Ava glanced at his shirt folded on the chair. The blood pattern fanned downward and toward the spine. She saw it once in Kandahar, once on a road that nobody in San Diego would ever drive. She kept her eyes on her hands. The room smelled like coffee that had burned on a hot plate for hours. "I recommend a CT of your chest," she said. "I'm concerned there's a foreign body near the thoracic spine. There's a risk of migration." He almost smiled. "I treated more wounds than you've read about." "Then you know infection isn't the only risk," she said. "Movement can change the position of a fragment." The curtain snapped open. Dr. Richard Vale stepped in with a crisp coat and a nod of annoyance between his eyes. "What's the delay, Dr. Sinclair?" "Wound characteristics don't match shrapnel," Ava said. "No exit wound, clean entry. I want imaging." "Mr. Mercer reports a grenade malfunction," Vale said. "This is a simple clean and close. No need to tie up radiology." "Entry pattern suggests a projectile, not fragmentation," Ava said. "A CT would rule out retained metal near vital structures." Dr. Sinclair Vale said, a warning wrapped in her name. "You are 6 weeks into residency. Please proceed with irrigation and closure. Discharge with antibiotics. Follow up in a week." Mercer held her gaze for the first time. It had the weight of a locked gate. Ava put her eyes back on her work. She irrigated until the water ran pink, then clear-pressed local anesthetic and set her sutures. Fast, efficient stitches that bit and bridged like they meant it. Laddered, not pretty, the kind you use to hold a leaking edge long enough for the rest of the body to catch up. From the next bay, a man propped on pillows watched through a soft gap in the curtain. His name on the chart said Eli Brooks. His right leg sat in traction, a metal Eiffel Tower around bone. He recognized the motion more than the technique. He had seen those hands in tents where the generator coughs and goes quiet, then comes back like a mercy. "Done," Ava said. She taped gauze, wrote on it with a black marker, and pulled the curtain fully for privacy. "Keep it dry for 24 hours. Return if you have chest pain, shortness of breath, or numbness." Mercer slid back into his shirt with the shrug of a man who refused to wince. "Maybe next time they send someone who knows what she's doing." He left without looking back. Lila blew air through her cheeks. "That was brutal," she said. Ava snapped off her gloves. "Place a standing order for a CT chest on Mr. Mercer. Mark clinical concern for retained foreign body." Dr. Vale already cleared him. "Order it anyway." Lila hesitated, then nodded. "I'll put it in." The lounge smelled like microwave noodles and old carpet. Ava sat with her laptop open and 3 tabs of journal articles up. Migration mechanics, fascial planes, case reports where a fragment walks centimeter by centimeter under the pull of breath and muscle until everything went wrong. Her Timex ticked on her wrist. She touched the plastic crystal with a thumb. The strap was scuffed black from a different country's dust. She set an alarm for 23 drove out of habit she didn't argue with. The cobalt cord on her wrist caught the light when she moved her hand. Flashed, went still. Sinclair Jenna Ochoa said from the doorway, "Word is you asked Vale to image a routine shrapnel case." "Not routine," Ava said. "Sometimes a hole is just a hole." "Sometimes," Ava said. She didn't lift her eyes. Ochoa watched her for a beat. "You're thorough. That's good. Don't make yourself a target." Footsteps faded. The room settled back into humming and clocks. Ava typed notes into a file she kept for herself, not because she needed an audience, but because writing made the pattern unblur. Thomas Mercer, 58. Entry wound 4 to 5 millimeter. Clean edges. No exit. Directional bloodstain inconsistent with blast. Low pain response. Depth estimate 3 to 4 centimeters. Proximity to T4 to T6. Concern for migration toward pericardium. Her phone buzzed against the laminate. Unknown number. "Dr. Sinclair," she said. "This is Claire Mercer," a woman said, calm and tight. "My father told me you wanted him imaged. He also told me your attending disagreed." "That is correct." "What did you see?" Ava weighed the words. "The entry wound isn't consistent with shrapnel. If there is a retained fragment near the thoracic spine movement, could push it toward the pericardium. Time to danger is often 12 to 48 hours. Silence. The sound of someone breathing in a room where a TV played softly. "Thank you," Claire said. The line went dead. Ava stared at her screen. She had stepped past policy, not far, just enough to feel air move under her feet. The hospital cafeteria, 2 floors down, clicked trays and silverware. An ambulance siren Dopplered outside, high to low and gone. In the orthopedic wing, Eli hit the call button and asked for the name of the young surgeon with the burn scar and the steady hands. The nurse gave it to him. He typed it into a text he had not sent in years. "Captain Sinclair at Outpost Kestrel." "That her?" The reply came fast. "You kidding?" She kept an entire fob breathing in 2019. In the quiet after midnight, Ava read about bullets and hearts until the words lost shape and color. She closed the laptop and sat still. The room's cold air bit the back of her neck. She breathed and let the breath leave. The tourniquet on her wrist felt like a promise she had not made out loud. Late afternoon smeared the windows of Mission Hills. Thomas Mercer stood in his kitchen and rolled his right shoulder. The ache was deep and mean. He told himself it felt like a bruise. He rinsed a glass and watched the brown swirl down the drain. His study door was open. The display case inside gleamed with oil and pride. A rifle lay on the felt. Light skated across its metal and stopped on a spent casing in the wrong tray. He closed the study door. At 7:12 p.m., the radiology tech called Dr. Vale's office and got a yes to cancel the standing CT. The note in the chart read, "Unnecessary imaging avoided." The status updated to canceled. At 7:19 p.m., Ava's phone buzzed again. A system flag pulsed red at the top of her screen. She opened the message and read it. "Canceled by attending." She put her fingertip over the icon and held until the phone offered her choices. She turned off 3 alarms she did not need anymore. She left one. The Timex on her wrist kept time at an indifferent pace. Lila walked by the lounge door and flashed a tired smile. The halls carried the smell of chlorhexidine and something sweet from pediatrics. In the next bay over, a monitor beeped in a pattern Ava had learned to hear without thinking. She looked up at the clock over the sink and set her eyes on the numbers. She knew why she had set 23 Hiverdern. She didn't touch the dial. She left the clock running. The lounge lights hummed against the dark. The Timex on Ava's wrist kept its small, stubborn beat. She closed the laptop, slid it aside, and pressed her palms flat on the cool table. The cobalt cord on her wrist left a faint print in her skin. In orthopedics, the hall smelled like chlorhexidine and lemon floor polish. Eli Brooks sat half upright with his leg in a scaffold of chrome. He watched the doorway as if expecting weather. When Ava appeared to check a post-op note on the wall console, he cleared his throat. "Doc," he said, keeping his voice easy. "Nice ladder stitch on that shoulder yesterday." Ava glanced over. "You were paying attention." "Hard not to. You kept the bleeding quiet without babying the edges." He paused. "They teach that downtown." She knew what he meant. She did not confirm it. "How is your pain?" "Manageable," he said. "That colonel, you saw something." "I saw a wound that needs imaging." She kept her hands at her sides. Imaging was canceled. Eli watched her face, not her words. "You ever have a decision sit on your chest like a cinder block?" Sleep, she said. You have a fixation tomorrow. Copy, he said. He let it go. He was good at survival. Morning burned thin over San Diego. The conference room filled with shoe squeaks and coffee heat. Rounding started at 7. Dr. Vale stood at the head of the table with a tablet in a tight mouth. Cases, he said. Ava presented 2 overnight admissions, appendicitis clean, a drunk fall with scalp lac observed and discharged. She reached the 3rd. Mr. Thomas Mercer, 58, shoulder wound. I recommend we call to assess any delayed symptoms and reinstate the CT. Not necessary, Vale said before she finished. He is discharged with clear instructions. His entry wound does not match blast. If a fragment migrated, we would miss it. Dr. Sinclair, we do not chase stable patients who do not want to be chased. His gaze moved on a beam skipping a surface. Next. Jenna Ochoa gave Ava a small look over her coffee cup. It was not pity. It was a warning to drop it. Ava wrote nothing on her pad for a moment. The Timex ticked against her skin. By mid-morning, the ER settled into the moving parts of any day. A toddler with an almond lodged in his nose. A chef with a burn shaped like a grill grate. A cyclist who lost a fight with a curb. Ava stitched and irrigated and ordered labs with the smooth reflex of someone who had learned to breathe where things went wrong. Between cases, she checked the system. The CT order in Mercer's chart read canceled by attending. The notation carried a tidy stamp, the kind of certainty the computer loves. She added a line to her own private file. Day 1, post-injury, discharged, no imaging, contact made by family. At noon, Lila swung by Bay 4 with a handful of gauze she did not need to carry. Her scrub smelled like eucalyptus soap. You look like you slept under a desk. I slept near a desk, Ava said. Radiology called me, Lila said. Wanted to make sure I knew they canceled your order. They said unnecessary. They said maybe the new resident needs a reminder about resource stewardship. Ava's jaw eased, then set. Thanks for the reminder. You want lunch? Lila asked. Not hungry, Ava said. Have a good shift. Outside gulls flared and dove over the parking lot as if it were a great key. The light came in off the bay and laid itself over the glass of the sliding doors. Ava stepped to the edge of the ambulance bay and took 5 breaths that counted to 5. The air smelled like hot asphalt and salt and exhaust. Back in Mission Hills, the house held the hush of an expensive neighborhood in the middle of a day. Claire Mercer stood in her father's kitchen with a mug in one hand and a debate on her face. You could go back, she said. Get the scan. It is one test. Thomas Mercer rinsed a plate clean and slid it into the rack. I'm not walking back there to let a kid lecture me again. She did not lecture you. She did it politely, he said. It was still the same thing. Claire let the silence sit. She called me, she said, quieter now. She told me what she was worried about. She did not have to. Mercer dried his hands on a towel. He turned his right shoulder in a slow roll. The ache dug in, then backed off. She is covering herself. I work ER, Claire said. I know what covering yourself sounds like. He looked at the doorway to his study. It stood open a few inches, showing the edge of a glass case and a line of polished wood. He closed it with 2 fingers. The latch clicked soft. Drop it, he said. She did not. She took out her phone and typed something. He watched her do it and pretended not to. The afternoon at Coastal Mercy ran on rails. Ava drained a hematoma on a teenager's shin. She sedated an anxious man for a shoulder reduction and felt the thunk when the joint slid home. She threw the tourniquet cord from one wrist to the other and back when her thoughts started to loop. Jenna passed her in the hall and fell into step. You still on about the museum hero? He is not a hero, Ava said. He is a patient. Jenna looked at her. You know what I mean. Do I? Jenna stopped. On paper, he is clean. On paper, you look pushy and new. She lifted her hands. I am not saying right or wrong. I am saying be smart. Ava nodded. It was a courtesy, not an agreement. At 3, a commotion erupted at the bay doors. A delivery truck pulled in the wrong lane. Lila put up both hands and shouted with a voice that cut through diesel rumble. The driver backed out as 3 EMTs pushed a gurney past the mess. The stretcher held a man with a burned forearm and eyes that never left Ava's hands while she worked. She sutured in a rhythm that made the monitor beeps fall into sync without meaning to. Her Timex ticked 1 time out of 4, the same as the machine. Near 5, an email from Medical Affairs hit her inbox. Title line read, Documentation Note. Inside 3 lines. Re-evaluate your ordering practices for imaging. Resource utilization is a shared responsibility. Please discuss with your attending. There was no signature, just a block of small print that told her how to be a good citizen. She did not reply. Sun slid low. The city took on that amber tint that makes everything look like memory. Out beyond Harbor Island, a tourist boat blew its horn. 2 quick blasts. The sound pressed against the glass like a hand. Ava found a quiet corner near the end of the radiology hall and called up journal abstracts on her phone. A case from Ankara, a case from Madrid, a small series from Houston. All of them showed drawings that mapped a path from shoulder to heart like a slow river. She traced the line with a fingertip skin to screen and let the map sink in. Her phone shivered in her hand. A text from an unsaved number. He is stubborn, pain down the arm this afternoon. Says it is nothing. The name under it read Claire M. Ava typed, any shortness of breath, any chest pressure. He would not say if he had it. Her reply took shape and changed shape twice before she sent it. If symptoms change, call 911. Keep him seated. Keep him from reaching overhead. Try to keep him from lifting. The message looked ridiculous in its simplicity. It was all she could give. Claire sent back one word, copy. Evening rose across the hospital in layers. Pediatrics grew quiet. Ortho rumbled. ICU clicked down to whispers. In the cafeteria, a line formed for something that smelled like cinnamon and cheese and not like food. The aquarium near the gift shop burbled and glowed blue on the floor. Ava sat in the staff stairwell for 3 minutes and watched dust motes pass a narrow beam of light. Her hand found the tourniquet cord and rolled it tight against her palm until the edge pressed a thin bite into skin. She let go and watched the mark fade. She checked the time. The Timex said 1856. She did not go home. In Mission Hills, the light slanted across the living room like a stripe. Thomas Mercer sat down and stood back up because sitting made him aware of his breathing and standing made him aware of his shoulder. He settled for leaning against the counter. Claire stood by the sink with her phone near her hip. They did not speak. The house held their silence like a bowl holds water. At Coastal Mercy, a small crowd gathered around Bay 6. A high school soccer player lay staring at the ceiling while Ava palpated his ankle and explained ligaments in short sentences he could hear. He smiled once when she mimed a hinge. His mother asked the same question twice and apologized twice for asking it. Eli watched from his bed as the day thinned to evening. He was a long distance from the sand and wire that used to bracket his vision. He was not far from the sound it made in his head when a decision mattered. He took out his phone and pulled up a contact he kept for luck. He typed a message with a care that made his hands slow. Found her. He hit send and closed his eyes. The room smelled like antiseptic and warmed plastic. Somewhere down the hall, a TV murmured baseball broadcast noise without the bats. At 19 a.m. 32, a small flare of fireworks broke over the bay. The color washed the ER windows red, then gold, then gone. The sound arrived a breath later. A soft thump. Ava stopped with a chart half open. For a second, the room tilted toward a tent with canvas walls and a generator that coughed and fell silent. She blinked and the ceiling returned to its grid. Lila appeared at her side with 2 paper cups. Tea, she said. Not coffee. Someone said you were trying to sleep again without staying. This might help. Ava took it. The cup was hot enough to burn a little. She liked the sting. Thanks. You good, Lila asked. Yes, Ava said. Honesty within the bounds of the shift. She cleaned a tray, folded gauze to a perfect square and stacked it in a bin that made a satisfying click when it seated. She wiped a line of saline that had dried white on the edge of the counter. The Timex on her wrist marked 20:04. In the kitchen at Mission Hills, Claire reached up for a glass on the second shelf to hand to her father. He reached at the same time with his right arm. The rim of the glass grazed his fingertips. He drew a breath that caught halfway in his chest. The glass wobbled in the light. He closed his hand around it and set it down. Claire looked at him. He did not meet her eyes. Her phone lit the countertop. She did not pick it up. She watched the rise and fall of his chest as if it were a tide she knew better than he did. The room held a copper smell from the roast she had made and a faint ghost of oil that lived in the study behind the closed door. The Timex ticked. Ava finished a note and slid it into the queue. Her tea had gone cold. She threw it away and thought about making more. She did not move. The hallway lights blinked into their night mode without changing color. Claire drew in a breath and let it out. She opened a drawer and took out a pen that had Coastal Mercy stamped on the side. She set it next to her phone. Her hand stayed near both. The house listened. The light from the street outside painted a thin stripe across the tile that looked like a seam in fabric. The sound in Ava's head matched the monitors in Bay 2. She did not try to separate them. She stood still enough to feel her own pulse under the band of the watch. She held that rhythm as if it were a small animal sitting quiet in her hands. The first call came through as static and breath. Coastal Mercy, this is Medic 47. 58-year-old male, sudden chest pain and shortness of breath. Blood pressure 88/54, heart rate 140. Recent shoulder wound sutured yesterday at your facility. Family mentions possible retained fragment. Arrival in 3 minutes. Lila was already moving. She pulled a trauma cart to Bay 2 and tore open a packet of electrodes. Oxygen at 15 liters, 2 large bores. Ultrasound here. Ava pushed aside the curtain with her shoulder and snapped on gloves. The room smelled like chlorhexidine and fresh plastic. The Timex beat a calm that did not match the air. The doors hissed. The gurney came in fast with 2 EMTs at the rails, and Claire Mercer walking tight at the side, one hand on her father's wrist. Thomas Mercer lay gray under the fluorescent lights with an oxygen mask smeared with fog, sweat glued hair to his temple. Transfer on 3, Ava said. 1, 2, 3. They slid him over to the ER bed. He grunted once and swallowed sound. Mr. Mercer, I am Dr. Sinclair. Can you hear me? Can't get air, he said through the mask. The words came out shredded. Stay with me, Ava said. Any new numbness? Any trauma since discharge? Claire answered. He reached for a glass about an hour ago, said he felt a pull in his chest. He tried to pretend it was nothing. Lila called out numbers. BP 85/55, HR 141, respirations 30 shallow, O2 sat 91 on non-rebreather. Ava pressed the ultrasound probe against his chest. Gel chilled the skin. She angled subcostal and swept. Black crescent where there should be none. A halo of fluid hugging the heart. The heart itself beat a hard stutter inside a rising pool. Pericardial effusion with tamponade, Ava said. There is blood in the sac. He is crashing. Jenna Ochoa slid in beside her eyes on the screen. Call cardiothoracic. Call the OR. Can they get a room now? Lila spoke into the phone as she ran. Paging Dr. Metastat, request OR3. Ava did not take the probe off. She watched the chamber walls press against fluid and rebound weakly. The EKG on the monitor flicked with an angry regularity. The man on the bed blinked slow like he was falling down a well. We do it here, Ava said. Jenna looked at her. Ava, you are not credentialed for that. He will not make it upstairs, Ava said. Needle, 18 gauge, 60 cc syringe, lidocaine, sterile gloves. Sinclair. Jenna's voice was low, not angry, not fearful. She was thinking, and she was an attending who had not spent nights in dirt. How many? Enough, Ava said. She kept her voice steady and let the number stay off her tongue. Lila dumped a spinal needle in a sterile pack next to Ava's hands. You are leading, she said. It was not a question. Ava pulled a mask up. She cleaned the subxiphoid region with a paint of brown that stained her gloves. She infiltrated lidocaine with a small needle until the skin raised a pale wheal. She placed the ultrasound so the heart sat at the left of the screen, with the fluid a dark lake between needle path and rhythm. Mr. Mercer, she said, you will feel pressure. Try not to move. She pitched her voice as if she were anchoring both of them with it. His eyes found hers for the first time. A flicker of recognition, a flicker of regret. Do it, he said through plastic. Ava advanced the spinal needle at 45 degrees toward the left shoulder. She watched the tip on the ultrasound, a gleam moving through gray. The room's noise thinned to beeps and breath. The metal of the needle whispered in her glove when she steadied it. There it was. The pop against fibrous tissue. The sudden give. She pulled back on the plunger. Dark blood filled the barrel like smoke. I am in, she said. She aspirated slowly. 20 milliliters. 30. 40. The man's pressure nudged up on the monitor like a hand pushing through water. 50. The pulse on the screen found more distance between beats. His face picked up a shade of pink the gray could not swallow. BP 98/64, Lila said. Heart rate 110. Claire covered her mouth with her hand. It trembled once and then went still. She looked at Ava the way you look at the man who reached in and turned a sternum back on. Ava drew another 10 and felt the resistance change. She pulled the needle out and pressed gauze to the tiny hole her hand had made. She taped it down. She wanted to keep going, and she wanted to get him upstairs under lights he needed. Dr. Meta is scrubbed and ready, Lila said. OR3. Transport now, Jenna said. Keep the mask on. Keep him flat. 2 orderlies slid the bed into motion. Claire followed, fingers brushing the rail. At the elevator, Mercer caught Ava's wrist. His grip was weak and exact. The tourniquet cord flashed cobalt against her skin. "You were right," he said. "No arrogance, only air and effort." "Hold that thought," Ava said. She eased his hand back to the sheet so he would not pull out a line. The doors closed. The ER noise flowed back in as if someone had lifted a lid. Ava pulled off her gloves and binned them. Her hands were dry and clean and shaking only on the inside. Dr. Vale appeared at the edge of the bay with his coat unbuttoned and the red of a finished operation around his eyes. 2 words left his mouth before he reached her. "What happened?" "Mr. Mercer returned in tamponade," Ava said. "I performed a pericardiocentesis in the ER to stabilize for transport." "You what?" "He was decompensating," Ava said. "Cardiothoracic was on the way. There was not time to move him without draining." Vale looked at the empty bed and then at the ultrasound still frozen on his last good image. The heart huddled smaller inside a dark arc of fluid. He put his hand on the machine as if it would give him a different picture. "You are not authorized," he said. "I documented my concern yesterday," Ava said. "I requested imaging. It was canceled." He came back in shock. "You cannot make these calls on your own," Vale said. The voice was clipped, but the eyes were not cruel. "You put this hospital at risk." "I kept a man alive," Ava said. She felt heat in her neck and kept her tone level. "We can argue about paperwork after." He stared at her. The room around them hummed with the sound of people who were not in this argument. Jenna stood at the edge of the curtain with her arms folded. Lila was already cleaning the tray and humming a line under her breath to keep from taking sides with her face. "Who taught you to do that?" Vale said, quieter now. Ava met his eyes. "The Army did," she said. "Captain Ava Sinclair, Army Medical Corps, 3 tours, Outpost Kestrel." For a second, he looked like a man seeing a map he had not known was in his pocket. His jaw worked once. "If that is true, it should have been in your file in letters I could not miss." "It is in my file," she said. "You did not ask." Before he could reply, the wall phone rang in a way that made heads turn. Lila grabbed it and pressed it to her shoulder. "For Dr. Sinclair," she said, "cardiothoracic." Ava took the handset. "Sinclair." Meta, the voice said, over a soft background of suction and metal. "Your patient is stable under anesthesia. We evacuated blood. Found and removed a 7.62 by 39 fragment lodged near the pericardial reflection. Likely Russian manufacture based on the base markings. Another hour or 2 and the phrenic artery would have been compromised." Ava closed her eyes for 1 count and opened them. "How is he now?" "Heart is beating with room to move," Meta said. "We are closing. He will go to ICU. Good catch." "Thank you," Ava said. She handed the phone to Lila and wiped a thumb across a line of gel that had dried on her knuckle. Vale watched her face. 7.62, he said. It came out not as a question, but as a piece that fit. "Not shrapnel," Ava said, "not a museum malfunction." He drew a breath and let it leave him. "You told me yesterday the pattern did not match." "I did," she said. He put both hands in his coat pockets and rocked once on his heels like a man who wanted to sit and could not find a chair. "You made the right call," he said. It cost him something to say it. He said it anyway. "We still have to discuss process." "We will," Ava said. He looked around the bay at the frozen ultrasound at the empty bed at Jenna and Lila, not listening on purpose. He nodded just once and stepped out of the curtain. Jenna came in and stood close enough that their shoulders almost touched without crowding. "Nice work," she said. Ava took a breath that went all the way down. "Thank you." "You can stop shaking now," Jenna said. "I am not shaking," Ava said. "Your watches," Jenna said, and tipped her chin at the Timex. The second hand skipped bold along the face in a rhythm that felt just a fraction too fast. Ava laughed once, quiet and short. It was a release, and it was a start. She pulled her mask down and let air that did not smell like iodine into her lungs. Claire came back from the elevator bay with a small damp line on her cheek, where she had wiped it with the back of her hand. She did not come into the room at first. She stood in the doorway and watched Ava as if she were measuring something that did not have units. "ICU in 30, she said when she stepped closer. "Dr. Mehta says he is stable." Ava nodded. "You did the right thing calling." Claire shook her head. "You did the right thing not letting him go soft under you." She held Ava's eyes. "Thank you." "You are welcome," Ava said. Claire looked toward the hall where the ICU elevators waited. She pressed her lips together, then spoke. "He wants to talk when he is awake." Ava did not move. The cobalt cord on her wrist caught a light and flashed quick like a signal. "I will be there," she said. The ER moved on. A nurse laughed low at something near the workstation. Someone wheeled a mop bucket by in smooth circles. The glass doors at the front let in a slice of night and the faint sound of traffic sighing along the bay. Ava washed her hands and watched the water spiral clear. She turned off the tap and checked the time. The Timex kept its beat. The needle had left a pinprick under a square of gauze. The decision had left a larger mark that no one could see. ICU held the kind of quiet that stacked on itself. Monitors spoke in careful bleeps. The air tasted like saline and wiped steel. Claire stood at the side of the bed with both hands on the rail. Thomas Mercer lay propped oxygen cannula at his nose, color back but thin. He opened his eyes and found Ava in the doorway. He did not look away. "I owe you," he said. His voice had the rough edge of a throat that had carried a tube. "You need to rest," Ava said. "I need to say this." He shifted a little and failed to hide the wince. The grenade story was a lie. Claire kept her gaze on him. She had known, but the words still pulled something through her face. "In my study," Mercer said. "A rifle that was not as empty as I thought. I was cleaning it. I did not check the chamber the way I have told 100 men to check. I fired a round into my own shoulder like a first-week private. The machine at his shoulder clicked. The line on the screen held steady. I panicked," he said. Pride did the rest. Ava came closer until she stood at the foot of the bed. The Timex on her wrist picked out a soft rhythm. "We treat what is in front of us. I treated you like the problem," he said. "You called my daughter anyway." His mouth twitched at one corner. "You broke a rule for me." She did not answer that. Claire did. She did the right thing, Claire said. "You were sinking." Mercer let his eyes close for 2 beats. He opened them to Ava again. "Thank you," he said. Before Ava could speak, steps sounded in the hall. Dr. Vale appeared in the doorway. Behind him came a woman in an Army service uniform, brown hair pulled into a regulation bun, and eyes that scanned every inch of the room before resting on Ava. Dr. Sinclair Vale said, "This is Colonel Dana Whitaker, Army Medical Corps." Whitaker nodded once. "Captain Sinclair?" She used the rank with a quiet certainty that did not ask permission. Ava stood straighter without meaning to. The burn scar on her forearm tightened as skin shifted. "Doctor will do." Whitaker took it in and did not press. "We heard about your intervention," she said. "We also have your record." Mercer watched them as if a door in the wall had opened. Claire eased back a half step to give them space. "Forward trauma teams are being rebuilt," Whitaker said. "We need curriculum that matches what the field actually does. I am here to offer you a civilian contract to design and teach it. No deployment, no uniform. Control over content." Val stayed quiet. He had the face of a man who knows not to interrupt a negotiation that is not his. Ava looked at the bed, then out the glass toward the dark. She felt the cobalt cord against her wrist. It had warmed under her skin. "I left the Army for a reason." Whitaker did not fill the silence. She waited. "Kandahar," Ava said. The word arrived with the cool of a different night. 4 children in the wrong place at the wrong time. Bad intel. "I tried." The rest of the sentence did not need words. It was in the set of her shoulders. Whitaker's eyes softened without losing their focus. "I have read that report. It reads like it happened to someone else," Ava said. It did not. Whitaker stepped closer, careful not to crowd. The smell of starch and warm fabric came with her. "My son is buried at Miramar," she said. "Platoon leader." The medic with him was 19 and 6 weeks out of training. He did what he could with what he had. It was not enough. I have spent years watching that fact sit on people who did not deserve it. Ava's hand went to the edge of the blanket at the foot of the bed and smoothed a wrinkle that did not matter. The motion let her breathe. "We can keep losing people to gaps," Whitaker said, quieter now. "Or we can close some of them. You know exactly where the gaps are. You did not learn in a simulation." The room held for a count. Vale looked at the ceiling. Claire looked at her father. Mercer looked at Ava. "Think about it," Whitaker said. She did not push it across the line into pressure. "My card is with the charge nurse." She stepped back. Vale nodded once to Mercer and to Ava and left with Whitaker. The door sighed shut and left the 4 of them in the measured quiet again. Mercer found Ava's eyes. "You were made for this," he said low. You keep people alive. I am also tired, Ava said. He tried to laugh. It turned into a cough he smothered. Even the Marines sleep, he said when he caught his breath. No one sleeps forever. Claire moved to adjust his pillow. She looked at Ava over her shoulder and gave the smallest nod. It meant, do what you need to do later. The sky over Miramar ran gold into gray. Wind came across the grass in steady pulls that smelled like cut earth and eucalyptus. Ava walked between white stones until she reached a marker with a name that lived in her hands. Lieutenant James Torres. The date on the stone found its old place in her chest. She stood with both feet planted. The Timex ticked like it always had. She set her fingers on the cool top of the stone and let her palm rest. The burn scar on her forearm looked like a brushstroke against the pale. I am still here, she said. It was barely sound. Bootsteps crunched the gravel behind her. She did not turn until the steps stopped. Colonel Whitaker stepped into the corner of her vision and then into the light. I come here on Thursdays, Whitaker said. My son is over there. She tilted her head toward a row 3 lines down. I give him news he would pretend he does not want. They stood without filling it with speech. A jet banked low out toward the water and left a line that the wind worked on. You do not owe the Army anything, Whitaker said. You owe yourself something. You get to decide what that is. Ava kept her hand on the stone. If I teach them to be better and they still lose someone, they will carry it. That does not change. No, Whitaker said. It does not. But they will carry it knowing they had the right tools. There is a difference. Ava let the wind push hair against her cheek and did not move it. The sun slid down to the edge and made the stones glow from within. 3 conditions, Ava said. The words were even. If I say yes. Whitaker waited. Curriculum control sits with me, Ava said. No rewrites for optics. No edits that remove truth. Agreed, Whitaker said. Psychological support is baked in, Ava said. Mandatory debrief. Real clinicians, not pamphlets. Agreed, Whitaker said. And I pick an assistant from the people I trust, Ava said. Eli Brooks. He knows the field and the classroom in his bones. Whitaker nodded. Send me his file. Ava took her hand from the stone. The skin underneath felt colder by contrast. She looked at the line of white markers until they blurred. I will need the hospital, she said. Space, sim lab, administrative teeth. I will talk to your chief, Whitaker said. I suspect a donor will talk to your administrator faster. Ava knew who she meant. The thought slid into place like a clamp. She left Miramar with dust on her shoes and the smell of grass in her jacket. The sky over the freeway had turned a deeper blue that collected headlights without giving them back. She drove without the radio. The Timex on her wrist held the time as if it could hold everything else. At Coastal Mercy, the administrative floor hummed with evening email. Monica Reeves had removed her heels and tucked them under her desk. Mercer's name on her schedule made her sit up. He walked in slowly with Claire at his side and a discharge bracelet still on his wrist. I want to fund a simulation lab, he said as soon as the door closed. Trauma. The kind that makes your residents sweat before it counts. I want Dr. Sinclair to build it. I want it done right. Monica reached for a pen she kept for contracts that would move. How much are we talking? Enough, Mercer said. Claire's mouth edged into a smile that looked like relief and mischief at once. Monica nodded. We can work with enough. On the staff floor, Ava found a quiet office and called Vale. He answered on the second ring. Dr. Sinclair. I have an answer, Ava said. I will take the role if 3 conditions are met. He did not argue that it was not his to grant. Tell me. Curriculum control. Psychological support is not optional. Eli Brooks as assistant when he is cleared. Vale was silent for a long breath. She heard the throat clear he did when he was about to concede something and wanted to make sure it did not sound like surrender. Yes, he said. You have them. Ava thought of Eli's watchful eyes in ortho and the way his hands stilled when the decision part of a moment arrived. She thought of the email about resource stewardship and the way it had not understood the cost of what had almost happened. One more thing, Vale said. I was wrong. I am putting that in writing. You do not have to, Ava said. I do, he said. For you. For the board. For the next resident who is right when I am certain. She let the words land. They changed the air a little. After the call, she stood alone in the stairwell and listened to the echo. She slid the cobalt cord off her wrist and felt the soft give of the woven band in her fingers. The Timex ticked inside the small space and sounded bigger than it was. She wrapped the cord back on and tightened it until it kissed skin. She went back to work. The floor smelled like lemon and night. The glass at the end of the corridor held a sliver of the bay and the suggestion of the city beyond. The second hand on her watch cleared the 12 and started down again. 6 months later, the third floor smelled like fresh paint and new plastic. Glass walls caught the Pacific light and spread it across the halls. A square Timex hung in the simulation lab above the door, its face nicked, and the band mounted under a small plate that read, "In chaos, keep a beat." The second hand ticked with a confidence the room adopted. Rows of folding chairs filled the training center. Residents in clean scrubs sat hip to hip. Nurses leaned in the back. A handful of Marines in khaki stood along the wall with arms folded. Dr. Vale kept to the last row coat unbuttoned, a look on his face that suggested he had made peace with a few things and was still making peace with a few more. Ava stepped to the podium with a small stack of note cards she did not look at. The cobalt cord on her wrist flashed when she touched the microphone. The room quieted on its own. "Trauma is decision-making when time is wrong," she said. "You will miss, you will land. The goal is to land more than you miss." Her voice carried clean. She did not raise it. She let the rhythm do the work. Behind her, a slide showed a pair of lines. One ran higher than the other and then bent down until it sat below. The legend said mortality rate facility versus national. A number in the corner read -12%. A small caption said 43 lives. She clicked to a photo of the new sim bay. Plastic torsos on gurneys, a shelf of tourniquets in tight coils, an airway station with masks and laryngoscopes lined like silver fish. The second hand of the Timex in the shot glowed red. The room chuckled when the photo angle matched the clock above their heads. "Welcome to the Advanced Trauma Training Center," she said. "You will practice hard, you will debrief hard, you will carry it together." Applause moved through the chairs in a wave. Lila stood near the aisle and clapped until her palms colored. Jenna Ochoa smiled with her eyes and gave a small whistle that cut neatly between the beats. Monica Reeves nodded from the side and made a note with the pen she saved for good signatures. After the talk, the fellows spread through the lab. The room took on the smell of rubber and alcohol wipes. Eli Brooks stood at a table with a stack of blue tourniquets and a bucket of short lengths of PVC pipe. His leg no longer carried a scaffold. A line of trainees waited for him to wrap their forearms and place a stick. "Feel the vein," he said. "Not where you think it should be, where it is." He bent a wrist and showed the angle. His hands were precise and patient. When a trainee mashed at skin without a plan, he stilled her hand with 2 fingers. Pause. Let the noise settle. Then choose. Ava moved from station to station. She watched airway practice and corrected a hand 2 inches. She watched a chest tube insertion and pointed with a chin at the space above the rib, not below. She listened to a debrief where a senior resident tried to talk over a junior and held up a palm until the junior finished. Dr. Vale passed behind her shoulder and said nothing. He did not have to. He was there. At noon, a small crowd gathered under the Timex for a short ribbon cut that had been scheduled because someone at administration liked ceremonies. Thomas Mercer walked in wearing a suit cut to hide the way he still favored one side. Claire kept pace beside him with a rolled program in her hand. He looked good in the light. The room noticed. Monica said remarks she had practiced in the mirror. Words like partnership and excellence sounded less plastic than usual in the room they had built. She gestured toward Mercer and called him by name. He nodded once like a man acknowledging a radio call. After the ribbon, Mercer found Ava near the back. He took an envelope from his inside pocket and held it out. The paper whispered when she opened it. A photo lay inside, Mercer in a suit beside Claire in a white dress, 2 kids and small shoes between them. A courthouse stoop. The sunlight washed the edge of the frame. On the back, in careful block letters, it read, "To Dr. Ava Sinclair for time. I did not know I would have. Thank you, Thomas Mercer." She turned the photo over and studied the faces. She did not speak. He did not hurry her. "You saved me twice," he said after a moment. "The second time you gave me the sense to not waste it." She slid the photo into the inside pocket of her jacket so it would sit close to the Timex when she hung the jacket later. "Congratulations," she said. He smiled in a way that moved the scar near his mouth into a new shape. "On all of it," he said, and let the room take him back. The afternoon ran on a hum. Scissors snipped, monitors beeped at practice volumes. In one corner, Dr. Mehta walked a group through a pericardial window on a thorax model that had cost enough to make Monica blink. He used a pencil to draw the angles they should see. He did not tell them the angle they would feel. That part was theirs. A tall man in a navy suit slipped in beside Vale. He carried a soft leather portfolio and a card that said Department of Defense Medical Services under his name, Michael Brennan. He watched the airway station for a full minute before he spoke. "This is clean work," he said. Vale nodded. "It is different work." Brennan turned the card in his fingers. "We would like this model at 5 other centers." Ava joined them. She had heard the sentence from across 2 stations. Brennan offered his hand. "Dr. Sinclair," he said, "I have been reading numbers with your name on them." "Numbers do not carry patients," she said. "People do." "People make the numbers move," he said. "We want to help with that." She looked at the lab. Eli tightened a tourniquet with a twist of his wrist and met the eyes of the trainee across from him until she steadied her breath. Lila stacked airways and laughed at something a fellow said in a way that made it easier to fail and try again. The Timex kept time above the door. "Curriculum control stays here," Ava said. "Mental health is not an add-on." Brennan nodded. Understood. He left a card with a phone number that would answer. He did not ask for a rehearsal or a brand. He told Vale he would be in touch, and then he was gone, folded into the flow of the hospital, like a man who had been in these halls often enough to know how to move without stirring the surface. The first cohort assembled at the end of the day for a short debrief in the lecture room. Fluorescent light softened under a line of diffusers. The projector fan whirred in a steady hush. Ava stood in front of a table where 8 blue cords lay coiled like small rivers. "When you start the night shift," she said, "tie one of these on your wrist. It is a reminder to slow your hands when your head speeds up." She placed a cord in each palm. Eli took his last. He had kept the frayed one he came in with. He tied this new one beside it. "Debrief with Dr. Cho after every sim," Ava said. "Do not skip. I do not skip." They did not clap. They did not need a ceremony for a piece of webbing. They slid the cords onto their wrists and checked the fit. The gesture felt like joining a team without saying the word. That night, the training center emptied out to the soft chatter of people who had worked and wanted to keep talking. The halls went quiet by degrees. The smell of rubber lifted. The glass reflected indoor light back at itself until only the exit signs and the clock kept their color. In the research library, Vale found Ava reading a case report with a highlighter line already half dry. He leaned on the doorway and waited until she looked up. "The board signed off," he said. "Your incident report reads the way it should. So does the one with my name." She set the article down. "Thank you." "You were right," he said. "I was wrong." He tasted the words before he gave them, and then gave them anyway. "I'm glad you stayed." She nodded once. "Me too." When he left, she sat a minute longer with the quiet. She tucked the highlighter away and closed the journal. She slipped the photograph from her pocket and set it beside the Timex on the table. The kids in the picture had their mouths open mid-laugh. The clock face showed 7:01. Her phone buzzed. A message from a number that did not live in her contacts. "Corporal Sarah Chen here. Your mass casualty flow saved 2 in Hasaka tonight. I owe you coffee when I'm back." Ava typed a short reply. "I will be here." She put the phone face down. She picked up the photo and put it back where it had been. She stood and turned off the lamp. The room darkened to a tide pool of shapes. The Timex kept its beat. On the way out, she passed the simulation lab and paused. The clock over the door ticked, and the cobalt cords on the table threw a faint blue in the low light. She pressed her fingers to the glass for a second and felt the cool through her skin. The burn scar on her forearm blanched against the pain, then flushed back. Outside, the night air smelled like salt and jacaranda. The city held itself quiet. She walked toward the parking lot, with the ocean pulling at the edges of the dark and the watch steady on her wrist. The beat in the band matched the one in her chest. She did not try to separate them. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.